Let's take a look at the most common translation theories coming up. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Happy May. It's already May. Crazy. Basically a third of the year is already gone. Yeah, I hope you're having a good year so far. You will have about 2 months more of content from me before the summer break. So I hope I can give you some interesting videos. Today's is all about translation theories. Now, if you have gone to university for translation or linguistics, you will most likely have heard from them, hopefully. Otherwise, if you haven't, then this is going to be all new for you. But don't worry, because I think most of you will already know these theories, even though unconsciously, and you're probably applying them every day without you even knowing it. Translation is a very practical craft. You don't really need to know the theories, the academic background behind what we do in order to start. Sometimes, however, if you're aware of them, you can use them. You know, they are like a tool in your toolbox that you can use. You can make certain decisions in the translation process. You can maybe mingle two different theories if it calls for it. You can even go against the translation theory if it rhetorically makes sense. So just having them in your toolbox can really benefit you when you're actively working on it. But you need to really understand them, so you have them at the forefront of your mind. Otherwise, they just disappear, right? Me personally, I did some linguistic courses throughout my career also, next to the stuff I learned at university, because I'm really interested in this stuff. So I hope I can give you a nice kind of, you know, first, if this is your first encounter with these things, I hope I can give you a nice way in, and then I'm gonna put a bunch of links in the description so you can actually learn more if that kind of stuff interests you. So in this video, I'm gonna explore the 3 most common, most taught translation theories, I would say. We start with Equivalence Theory by Eugene Nida, then we move on to Skopos Theory by Hans Vermeer, and we end with the Polysystems Theory by Itamar Evans-Zohar. Let's get started. So a great place to start when you want to get into translation theory is always equivalence, in my opinion, because you will see everything that comes afterwards is building on the concept of equivalence. So you really need to understand that first, because it's in every other theory as well. Equivalence is Latin. It simply means equal in value, equivalence. And the theory simply puts forward that there is an equal value relationship possible between the source text and the target text. Now, it doesn't say that they need to be totally of equal value. That would be too much. There is a formal equivalence, more on that later, where it's source and text are fully of equal value, but that's not the idea of the equivalence theory. It just needs to be on some way or the other possible that they are of equal value. This can be in form, in length, in purpose, in effect on the reader, etc. There are many different aspects to a text, as you all know. When a word or phrase has the exactly same meaning in the source text as in the target text, we speak of formal equivalence. So a person sends a text to the people in his or her country, and a translator sends the same text with his or her own words to the people in his or her country and culture, and that they need to be equivalent. However, it's a tricky thing with equivalence. Think about, I was thinking of an example, and I came up with the example of friend in English, the word friend, right? In German, that would be Freund. And at first glance, that seems like, yeah, that's equivalent, right? That's the same expression, same meaning in source and target. Now, if you look at this a bit in more detail, it's pretty obvious that there are quite big differences between friend and Freund. If you look in English, she's my friend, he's my friend. Both genders exactly the same. In German, Freund, mein Freund, is a very masculine word, right? It is heavily gendered. You would have Freund and Freundin for female and male, and there you already have it's already not equal in value, the same words. Then you can go further. In German, Freund, Freundin is very often used as boyfriend, girlfriend. In English, not at all. My friend is not my boyfriend or my girlfriend, right? That's 2 different words. So again, difference in value. In English, pretty much everyone is your friend, right? You can say maybe you met someone once or twice, but you will still refer to them in a conversation like, oh, you know, a friend once told me, blah, blah, blah. In German, you will not say that if it's not really your friend. So I could go on and on. As you can see, a word simple as friend, Freund, which seems at first glance fully equivalent, is not equivalent at all. So it's a very interesting thing to think about equivalence in translation. That's why it's a really important place to start when you think about translation theories. the most equivalent translation is not always the one that is most logic, the one that is most straightforward. In fact, it's very likely that you would not translate friend from English to Freund in German, depending on the context, right? Of course, this requires a deep knowledge of your own target, of your own native language, of your own culture. That's why we usually don't offer translations into other languages where you're not deeply involved with the culture, because things like this can really mess up your translation. And that's basically where equivalence comes in. Now, Eugene Nida, an American linguist, coined the two terms formal and dynamic equivalence. As I mentioned before, formal equivalence refers to a direct translation, word for word. You basically let the reader, the target audience, assume the context of the culture of the source. Now, this is not always a bad thing, right? There are instances where formal equivalence is needed, stylistically, rhetorically as well, where it's wanted, that you want the target audience to think, like put themselves into the shoes of the source culture, the source context. So it can happen that formal equivalence is good. Also with very straightforward text where it's not much thinking, where MT is very good in formal equivalence, for example. So it's not always a thing we don't need, but in general, we tend to do more dynamic equivalence in translation, which has the target audience in mind the same as the source audience. So the same effect that a text has on the source reader should also be the effect of the translation on the target reader. I think that's what we do on a daily basis anyways, dynamic equivalence. So it's just interesting to think about the two concepts from an academic point of view, but I'm sure you are all very familiar with that. Now let's move on. In 1984, German linguist Hans Vermeer came through with a new kind of revolutionary theory at that time. He coined the Skopos Theory. Skopos is Greek for purpose. That's basically all you need to know already. You know, equivalence was the main thing at that time, and Vermeer came in with the Skopos theory and said, you know what, hold on, equivalence only works in very fringe cases, right? It's well and good, but it only works in special cases. It's quite rare that the source and the text, target text, need to be equivalent in nature. That doesn't happen a lot. Most of the times the source and the target fulfill completely different purposes. So the basic principle of Skopos theory is that there is always a purpose for translating a text. Once you figured out what that purpose is, you will know the target audience, you will know the terminology, you will know the register, you will know the style, you will know everything that you need to know, and it will fall into place. So it all depends on the purpose of the text. In a way, there are as many ways to translate the text as there are possible purposes that this text fulfills. Now it's worth thinking about that for a second, because the purpose that a text fulfills in a source culture is not necessarily the same purpose as it fulfills in a target, right? In fact, it's probably most translations fulfill a different purpose than the author of the original text had in mind. And the bigger the difference between the two purposes is, the bigger your changes from the source language need to be. So in a way, Skopos theory tells you how far you need to detach yourself from the source text. If it's a completely different purpose, you need to completely detach yourself. So whenever you are writing something, when you are doing a translation, when you write a blog post, when you write your next LinkedIn post, for example, when you write a script for a video like this, then you need, by the way, yeah, I did so much research for this video. I wrote the whole script. It was really good. And then I just lost it. I don't know. Yesterday morning, I was staring at my screen for like 30 minutes. I didn't know what to do. The script was gone. I was very close to binning this video, but then, yeah, I got myself together last night. I wrote the script again with some things that I still have in my head from the research phase, and I did more research again. So the script came together, so the video goes out. I'm happy for that. But when I was writing this script, I really had the purpose of this video in mind, right? What is the purpose? What do I want to achieve with that? And then when I had that, I knew exactly what the target audience, what you guys are, what you know about this topic already, what language I need to use, what register. So it actually, Skopos theory helped me a lot in writing this video, which is quite interesting. So with this theory, this was really revolutionary, and Vermeer basically dethroned the source text, as he was once quoted. The source text has always been the holy grail before. It was the number one thing in the translation process. And now it's basically irrelevant unless you have the purpose of the translation. And the last one I want to mention is called Polysystems Theory. This one I focused on quite a lot in a relatively recent, it's been a few years already now, linguistics course that I took. And it was quite hard for me to grasp it, to understand it. But I think I did in the end, and doing this research helped me again to like really grasp it, because it was written in the framework of literature, and so it's quite hard for me to transpose this into a real life situation. But Polysystems Theory was developed by Israeli professor Itamar Even-Zohar, and it is a concept that looks at how languages and cultures have different systems, many different systems within each other, called a polysystem. A good way to explain it is kind of imagine a big library, and every section in this library is a different section, a different culture, a different society that has its own books, articles, works, cultural works, stories, etc. And what Even-Zohar proposed was that these sections, they don't exist independently from each other, but they are influenced by each other through translation. So translations work as bridges between the different systems within a library, and they bring kind of the different works from one system into the other. So it allows for ideas to flow, for innovation to happen, for cultural exchange to happen. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. So you have one culture, one society with a system within a system within a system called the polysystem, and you have another polysystem here, and translations is the bridge between the two societies that allows ideas to flow. And if you subscribe to a theory like this, then of course translation becomes a hugely important carrier of every information possible in between two systems, right? And especially in like smaller countries, where the smaller the country, the more emphasis is put on translation in general, right? Like that's why in Switzerland, translation is much more important than in the US, for example, because just of how interconnected a small country has to be to compete with the larger world, right? Whereas the US has everything and they're huge, so they can kind of be for themselves. That makes sense, right? And that's why a polysystems theory, something that is so interconnected between societies, would only come out of research in like smaller countries in Europe, like Belgium, Israel, Czech Republic, the Netherlands. That's where this system was established. So instead of viewing cultures and societies as isolated entities, the polysystems theory emphasizes the connectedness, the interconnectedness, the influence, the benefits that two societies can have on each other. So in other words, the main point of the theory is what we do every day anyways, that I also promote on this channel a lot, is that cultural awareness is just so extremely important in what we do. Just knowing linguistically the aspects of translation is not enough. You need to be very versed in the cultural aspect of the source and the target, so that you can be this bridge between the two societies. There you go, crash course on linguistic theories. I hope you enjoy this different kind of videos. Of course, I can't explain this like a professor does. That's why I'm going to link all the videos, all the research I did for this down below. If you want to learn more, this is really just an introduction to the three main theories that I've learned throughout the years. Sometimes I enjoy having these, more academic discussions about our profession, because translation can become very practical, just very straightforward. You can kind of get lost in the practicality almost of our profession, and I enjoy to sometimes look back in the history of why do we do things the way we do things, where does the thinking come from that we actually study at university, or and these kind of reflections you can do if you explore theories from the past. So hope you enjoyed. I see you next Monday with the next video. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see next on the channel, and I see you there. Bye bye.